Hey guys, welcome to Journey of Relaxation. Tonight we wander beneath the velvet sky of ancient Babylon where the stars aren't just pretty dots overhead, they're cosmic newsletters spilling secrets, warnings, and maybe a little tea. You're stepping into a world of rooftop rituals, dream decoding, and surprisingly chill stargazers who take horoscopes very seriously. You'll pass under stone arches still warm from the day's sun, your sandals kicking up the last sighs of desert dust. The city smells of incense-baked bread, and camel a combo you'll probably get used to eventually. The air is heavy, not quite hot, but thick enough that the breeze feels like a reward. Somewhere, a distant harp plays a lazy scale. Somewhere else, a goat sneezes. And above it all, clear skies. Sparkling constellations perfectly arranged as if some divine hand was playing connect the dots. You stop and look up. You'd recognize Orion's belt, but here it's called the Loyal Shepherd of Heaven. And honestly, that name kind of slaps. Of course, don't get too comfortable. You're in the middle of the cradle of civilization where kings are moody, temples are tall, and just stepping on the wrong side of a celestial prediction might get you yeeted into a pit. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know your location and the time you're tuning in. Always fun to see where you're all listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your slow stroll toward the towering temple complex, an ancient ziggurat that looks like someone built a pyramid out of layer cake and then kept going. The pathway is lined with low burning torches, flickering against carved walls, that tell stories in cuneiform you can't read. But if you could, you'd find out they're not all religious hymns. Some are more like ugh barley prices again. It's late. The kind of late where most of the city is asleep but a special few are still awake. You pass guards with bronze helmets and bored expressions. You pass a boy trying to balance a jug on his head while humming to himself. You pass two cats mid-fight who instantly stop and glare at you as if you're the weirdo. When you reach the temple, the scent of burning myrrh greets you like a wise old aunt. The temple's guardian, an older man with a beard long enough to qualify as a fire hazard, nods once and lets you through. No words. Just vibes. The steps up the ziggurat are steep. Babylonians didn't believe in handrails or OSHA regulations. But the higher you climb, the quieter the city becomes. You're leaving behind the sounds of donkeys and blacksmiths and entering the soft hush of midnight worship. At the top you find them, the temple astrologers. They sit cross-legged in loose robes, white linen, catching the moonlight. Their tools are simple clay tablets, styluses, a small oil lamp. One of them chews thoughtfully on a dried date as he peers upward, his brow furrowed like the sky owes him money. The night is warm and dry, the kind of weather Babylon always prays for. And tonight is important. There's a major conjunction, Venus and the moon practically holding hands in the sky. That sort of thing doesn't go unnoticed up here. You watch as one of the priests sketches out a rough star map on clay. It's not the detailed kind you'd find in a modern observatory, no laser pointers or telescopes here. But he knows what he's doing. These guys are trained from childhood, often scribbling omens before they learn to write their own names. One of them, a younger priest with a slight limp, motions for you to sit. You do. The rooftop stones are still warm like sun-heated bread. He explains softly, like someone easing a baby to sleep, that the stars don't cause events. No, they reveal them. They're messengers, not puppeteers. He looks at the sky as if it's a familiar face. Tonight they're watching to see if the king's latest dream aligns with celestial movements. Apparently he dreamed of 3 black birds circling a pomegranate tree. The priests are divided. Some say that's a good omen. Others think it's a sign of rebellion. Historians still argue whether Babylonian dream analysis was based more on astrology or on whoever had the loudest opinion at the time. You lean back. The stone beneath you radiates heat. A small breeze kicks up, tugging at the edge of your tunic. You watch the moon climb higher, framed by Venus's unblinking brilliance. You almost forget how serious this all is. But a sudden shout reminds you. Venus has moved, one priest hisses. The group gathers quickly. Venus has shifted just slightly, but enough that someone starts furiously etching a new symbol onto a clay tablet. Another priest mutters something about bad harvests. A third just sighs and rubs his eyes like he's been through this before. You stay quiet. You're the guest here. But deep inside you're realizing that for these priests, every glimmer of light is a whisper, every movement a sentence. And tonight the stars are talking a lot. Just as you're about to ask what the stars actually said, one of the priests stands and stretches. He grins crookedly. "Let's see if the king's dreams make sense by dawn," he says. "If not, we'll blame the goat. Because even in the ancient world, sometimes a bad vibe is just indigestion." You stretch your legs a little, shift your weight, and settle into the rooftop's warm stones again. Around you, the astrologers ease back into their comfortable positions, like people who've done this exact thing 1,000 times. Because they have. This isn't some once-a-year celestial gala, this is nightly ritual. Babylon's ziggurat rooftops weren't just monuments to the gods, they were observatories, chill-out lounges, and sacred offices all rolled into one. The rooftop air smells like burnt cedar and roasted dates, and the priest next to you hands you a small fig. You nibble, pretending to know the proper rooftop snack etiquette, and listen as the white-robed astrologers mumble to each other in a mix of Akkadian and low grumbles. Their movements are slow, deliberate. One smooths clay onto a fresh tablet, another lights a new oil lamp with the precision of a man who's lit 10,000 lamps before. You realize this isn't a frantic search for answers. It's more like watching librarians casually pull a few dusty volumes off the cosmic shelf. They're not worried, they're just curious. You're curious too, especially about how seriously these guys take this stargazing stuff. Turns out very. To be a Babylonian astrologer is to exist in that perfect balance of total faith and complete chill. You're watching men who believe the sky is a message board from the gods, but also seem like they could host a pretty soothing podcast about moon phases. The youngest priest, a boy probably no older than 16, is tasked with spotting patterns in the stars, something that sounds easy until you realize the night sky changes just enough to mess with your confidence. He squints up, mouth full of dried plum, and calls out a new alignment. The others pause, take it in, then return to their tablets without much fuss. Here's the thing. Babylonian astrology isn't just fortune-telling. It's political strategy, spiritual philosophy, and subtle flattery wrapped up in starry packaging. These priests aren't just star readers, they're advisors, analysts, sometimes even scapegoats. You suddenly understand why they look so calm. If you might get blamed for a flood because you misread Mercury, you learn to take things slowly. The eldest among them, a priest with hands like tree bark and a voice like rolling gravel, begins to chant quietly. Not for you, just to himself. A kind of calming rhythm. He's invoking Ishtar, goddess of love, war, and planetary alignment, which is honestly a chaotic resume. He stops mid-chant to crack his knuckles. "Ishtar knows we're watching," he mutters before going back to scribbling. In the distance, a faint gong sounds, marking the 3rd hour of the night. You're not sure if that means it's 11 p.m. or 3 a.m., but either way, no one here checks a sundial. They just know. Like how surfers know when the wave's about to hit. One of the other priests takes out a small wooden box. Inside is a polished obsidian disc reflecting the stars in perfect reverse. He holds it up, then lowers it, then holds it up again. It's not magic, it's just their way of double-checking positions. Like a compact mirror for cosmic gossip, you ask softly what they're watching for tonight. The middle-aged priest with the tired eyes explains they're tracking Venus's movement toward the constellation known as the True Shepherd. If Venus lingers there, it could mean harmony in the temples. If it darts away, tensions might rise among the city's elite. Historians still argue whether this specific omen was invented to calm the nobility or just to make the astrologers seem very necessary. You nod like this makes sense. It mostly doesn't. But you appreciate the vibe. And the vibe is unbothered. Sacred, yes. Reverent. But also just deeply peaceful. These priests have seen it all: bad eclipses, wayward comets, and emperors who thought a sneeze was a divine omen. One priest tells you that last month they had to perform a midnight ritual because someone claimed Mars was frowning. You didn't even know Mars had a face. They chuckle about it now. But back then, serious business. They don't dismiss omens, they just know which ones to politely nod at while sipping fig wine. You look out over the city below. Babylon sprawls like a sleepy golden maze, streets lit here and there by oil lanterns and torchlight. You can just make out the Euphrates winding lazily through the city like it's too tired to be a mighty river tonight. The sky presses down softly, the stars brighter than you ever imagined. It's no wonder these priests fell in love with it. You lean back on your elbows, yawning involuntarily. The youngest priest grins. "The stars are patient," he says. "So we must be too." You wonder if that's a proverb or just something his mentor says to avoid rushing. Someone begins humming a tune that repeats every few breaths, simple and slow. Another priest joins in, tapping his stylus rhythmically against the edge of his clay tablet. It's not music exactly, but it feels like it. You glance at the moon, now higher in the sky, still white, still round, still silent. Still, and just like that, you realize you're part of something deeply ancient. Thousands of years ago, someone else sat in this exact spot, under these same stars, eating the same slightly dry fig, and trying to figure out if Venus was in a good mood tonight. That kind of continuity does weird things to your sense of time. It stretches you out across centuries, wraps you in a soft echo. You don't speak again for a while. None of you do. The priests scribble. The oil lamps flicker. The stars do their quiet, relentless dance overhead. Eventually, someone coughs and mutters, still not blinking. You never find out if that's a good thing. By now, your legs have gone numb from sitting cross-legged on stone, but you're too enchanted to care. The sky above you has shifted ever so slightly, like someone nudged the whole dome a few degrees clockwise, and that small change sparks murmurs among the priests. Not panic, not even concern. Just interest, the way someone might notice a cat walking backward, or a fig tree blooming in winter. A priest gestures for quiet, not because anything loud happened, but because it's time. Time to consult the king's dreams. There's a small wooden stand at the far end of the rooftop, stacked with clay tablets like a sleepy version of a filing cabinet. A scribe no older than 30, but already balding, like it's a sacred duty, carefully selects one and brings it forward. This is tonight's task. The king, it turns out, has been having bad dreams again. His court needs an interpretation before breakfast, or else everyone's toast. Possibly literally. The priest smooths a cloth on the floor, places the tablet gently on top, and leans forward as though it's made of something far more precious than baked mud. He reads aloud. The king saw 3 black birds circling a pomegranate tree. Then the tree opened and inside was a snake eating the fruit. The rooftop falls quiet. Even the night breeze seems to hold its breath. You glance around. One priest raises an eyebrow. Another scratches his chin. A third just mutters, "That again." Apparently this isn't the king's first pomegranate snakebird moment. They huddle and begin softly debating, what does it mean? Betrayal, fertility, a boring diet. It's easy to laugh, but you realize quickly this is high-stakes interpretation. In Babylon, kings base real decisions, wars, alliances, public executions on dreams. And dreams are the astrologer's turf. One elder suggests the birds represent neighboring cities watching Babylon. Another proposes they're omens of plague. A third wonders if it's a weird coincidence. Historians still argue whether Babylonian dream symbology came from celestial observations, or if it was all just invented by creative insomniacs under pressure. You sit still, listening to a language that's both foreign and somehow familiar in rhythm. There's a beauty in the deliberation. These priests are not rushed. The stars never are, so why should they be? Eventually, one of them, probably the temple's dream specialist, chimes in with the winning theory. His voice is calm, like reading bedtime stories to a fussy god. The 3 birds, he says, represent the 3 loyal provinces. The tree is the kingdom. The snake is internal betrayal. He pauses, clearly pleased with himself. Someone close to the king is secretly harming the state. Everyone nods. Not because it's necessarily true, but because it's good enough to get through the day without bloodshed. You're not sure whether to be impressed or terrified. Probably both. The priest with the stylus begins carving the official interpretation into a new clay tablet. You hear the soft scratching of stylus against wet clay. That sound strangely becomes a sort of lullaby. The stars overhead, the flickering oil lamps, the sleepy murmurs of priests. It all blends into a surreal calm. As the tablet is sealed, a younger priest pipes up with a question. But what if the tree didn't open? What if it was always hollow? Everyone groans, not because it's a bad point, but because now they'll be arguing about snake metaphors until sunrise. You get the feeling this happens a lot. Someone brings out a jar of sweet wine mixed with herbs. It smells like thyme and fermented raisins, but it tastes oddly good. You take a small sip and let it settle. Everything up here is old and slow and wrapped in a sacred kind of ambiguity. You don't get clear answers. You get possibilities all dressed in ancient poetry. You glance toward the palace far below where a few windows glow. Is the king awake? Is he pacing, wondering if his snake tree bird nightmare means he'll be betrayed by his cousin, his vizier, or his new goat? Probably all 3. You almost feel bad for him. Almost. One of the priests, clearly in a teasing mood, says, "We should have told him the snake represents indigestion." Laughter bubbles quietly across the rooftop. Sacred or not, humor is welcome here, especially this late at night. Someone unrolls a soft reed mat and places a cushion on it, inviting you to lie down. You hesitate. Is it disrespectful to nap during a royal omen? Apparently not, because two priests are already dozing against the wall. You ease back, letting the mat cushion your spine, and stare up at the sky. The stars have shifted again. Mars twinkles near the edge of the horizon now. You wonder what that means. Probably something dramatic. But for now, the king has his answer. Or at least he has an answer. Tomorrow, couriers will rush across the city to spread the word. Temple guards will whisper about betrayal. The baker's assistant will swear it's about her bad date with the military officer. A goat will get blamed for something, because that's just how Babylon rolls. And up here under the stars, the astrologers will begin prepping for the next consultation. Maybe another dream. Maybe a blood moon. Maybe just a merchant who thinks the stars are making his wife grumpy. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the scent of clay and night air. When you open them, Jupiter has risen a little more. The king will sleep easier tonight. You're not sure you will. It's not even close to dawn yet, but the rooftop is beginning to stir again. You stretch, roll your shoulder, and notice the youngest priest returning with something odd in his arms, a small wooden cage. Inside, a very sleepy-looking chicken. You blink. You thought tonight was about the stars. What does poultry have to do with Venus? The chicken is gently removed from its cage and placed on a woven mat. It flaps once, looks deeply unimpressed, and settles into a half-squat. You look to the priests, waiting for someone to explain. They don't. Not right away. Because clearly, if you knew anything about proper astrological procedure, you'd know that interpreting omens sometimes involves chickens. Apparently, you've entered the phase of the night where the line between astronomy and interpretive performance art gets blurry. One priest, who has the slightly unhinged energy of someone who's been awake too long and likes it, starts talking to the chicken in a soothing tone. Another priest brings a bowl of water and places it nearby. A third sprinkles something, maybe barley flour, maybe just optimism, into a small circle around the bird. The ceremony has begun. You're watching divination in action, Babylon style. The chicken, somehow the star of the show now, is here to help confirm or deny what the stars have hinted. Specifically, was that Moon-Venus conjunction a good omen or just a celestial prank? You've learned that Babylonian astrology doesn't rely solely on the sky. The priests often combine heavenly signs with earthly rituals. They'll read how smoke curls, how oil spreads on water, how animals move, and yes, how chickens behave after a light sprinkle of sacred grain. It sounds wild, but remember, this is a civilization that invented algebra, so maybe we just don't get it yet. The priest watching the chicken declares with quiet certainty it stepped left before turning right. That's a favorable sign. Another priest nods sagely. Unless the left step was hesitant. You're not even joking, this is a legitimate debate now. The chicken's exact movement pattern is being cross-referenced against omen lists that go back hundreds of years. There are tablets stored in the temple archives with lines like, "If a chicken steps once and clucks twice, it is a sign of harvest joy." You're not making this up. Historians still argue whether these records were meticulously observed behavior or just guesswork written with confidence. The chicken does another little shuffle. You hold your breath. The priests collectively lean in. Then an egg. The chicken lays an egg. The rooftop erupts into pleased murmurs. This is apparently excellent news. You're told that an egg laid during an active conjunction means fertility, peace, and royal stability. Also omelets. Someone wraps the egg in a bit of cloth and places it gently inside a clay bowl, like it's a gemstone. You're a little stunned by how sacred this chicken suddenly feels. You resist the urge to name her. But in your head, she's now Nugget the Prophet. Once the egg is secured, attention shifts again, this time back to the sky. Venus is edging closer to the horizon now, about to disappear behind a cluster of low-lying clouds. The priests squint, tracking its position with an intensity usually reserved for chess grandmasters and suspicious toddlers. One priest begins etching the night's summary onto a tablet. This part's routine, but vital. Everything observed, star positions, dream interpretations, chicken footwork is recorded. These tablets aren't just for storage. They're future reference ammunition for debates, and part of the official chronicle. Someday, centuries from now, someone might dig this tablet up and go, "Ah, yes, the night of the egg." The scribe murmurs as he writes, almost like he's narrating for his own benefit. You catch snippets: Venus conjunct Moon, favorable omen, chicken laid egg, snake dream resolved as internal threat. It's oddly soothing. Then a pause. The priest nearest you points upward. See that he says, eyes wide. Mars is moving fast tonight. You look where he's pointing. Mars is indeed glowing redder than you'd expect. The priest frowns. Too fast for this time of year. There's a moment of unease. Not fear exactly, more like when a chess game suddenly shifts and everyone leans closer to the board. A priest fetches a chart scratched into an old slab of limestone. Another adjusts the oil lamp's light to get a better view of the stars. They're trying to see whether this Mars movement invalidates the good omens from earlier. This is how astrology works here. One sign alone is never enough. The sky is a conversation, and every new development might change the meaning of the last. It's exhausting, really. But the priests don't seem bothered. They just nod, discuss, and prepare to reinterpret the night. You admire the flexibility. In modern terms, it's like writing your horoscope in pencil because you know the moon's in a mood today. Eventually, they agree that Mars's position won't cancel the egg's message. It might mean a delay, though. Something about peace coming, but not without a little dramatic flair first. You swear one priest says the gods love suspense and you don't even question it. As the sky begins to brighten by the smallest degree, the rooftop shifts again. The chicken is recaged, the tablets are stacked, and the oil lamps are snuffed out one by one. The quiet becomes thicker, like the end of a meditation class. You sip the last of the sweet wine. Somewhere below a rooster crows, not Nugget, mind you. Nugget has earned a nap. You realize you've spent hours up here, and yet you've done almost nothing but sit, watch, and listen. And somehow that was everything. The night has been a slow drip of symbols, signs, and speculation, and now it's almost over. One last glance at the sky reveals a few stubborn stars still clinging to the edges of night. The priests are packing up, already debating tomorrow's forecast. You suspect it'll involve more dreams, more stars, and maybe, just maybe, another chicken. The rooftop is nearly empty now, just a few priests still lingering, gathering tablets and snuffing lamps. You stand, slowly stretch your legs, and peer over the edge of the ziggurat. The streets below are bathed in pale silver, soft and unreal in the moonlight. You can hear a lull in the city, that thin hush that only settles in just before dawn, when even the dogs are too tired to bark. But just as you think the night's magic is wrapping up, you're beckoned to the far corner of the rooftop where a small stone platform sits. It's covered in clay tablets, some fresh, others cracked and faded, clearly read and reread over the years. A priest in a white robe streaked with smudges of ochre and ash is hunched over one of them, stylus in hand, lips moving silently. This is the scribal corner. You approach, careful not to trip over a random scroll or the toe of a sandal, and settle beside him. He gives you a nod, just enough to acknowledge you, but not enough to interrupt the deep groove of his thinking. He's carving another entry into the night's log. The movements of stars, the behavior of Nugget, the prophet. Yep, that's her name. Now, in any other notable moments that might come in handy, if, say, the king wakes up screaming again. But this isn't just data collection. This is sacred sarcasm. The priest gestures for you to look at another tablet, a record from 5 years ago. It's written in the same careful hand, but the tone is unmistakably sassy. You read, on the 12th night, Mars flickered erratically and caused 3 priests to disagree so loudly that a clay tablet was broken and no omens were confirmed. The gods remained silent. So did the chicken. You laugh softly. The priest smiles. We try to keep things lively, he says. The gods are serious enough. We don't have to be. Turns out Babylonian scribes were allowed, perhaps even encouraged, to include little notes, dry jokes, and occasional jabs in their official records. Not because they didn't take the heavens seriously, but because they knew that stargazing without humor leads to very dramatic, very tired kings. You flip through another. A dog howled twice during Venus's ascent. Omens were unclear. Priest Nabu insists the dog was warning us. Priest Lugal says it just missed its dinner. Another one. A small boy tried to draw Jupiter's path and instead invented a new constellation shaped like a fish with legs. We named it the Running Salmon. Even in the ancient world, scribes had a sense of irony. Of course not everything is a joke. You see careful, dry records of eclipses, meteor showers, sudden appearances of comets. Some of these events had cities holding their breath. Others barely earned a yawn. Historians still argue whether certain recorded heavenly omens were actual astronomical phenomena or just very poetic sandstorms. But for the Babylonian priesthood, it didn't matter. Interpretation was the point. A sky full of omens was only useful if someone could write it down, argue about it, and file it in a clay drawer for next time. You notice that even the layout of the tablets is methodical. They're grouped not by date but by theme: dreams, eclipses, planets, crops, chicken-related clarifications. This is less like a modern archive and more like the world's oldest bullet journal. And just like any good planner, it comes with passive-aggressive footnotes. The priest beside you explains that some of the temple's most important astrology records were written during long droughts or high tensions, times when getting the signs right might mean peace, or at least someone keeping their head. He taps a corner of one tablet gently. This one helped stop a war, he says. A favorable reading of Jupiter's rise convinced the king to wait 3 days. The enemy got tired and left. You glance at the simple wedge-shaped writing. It doesn't look like much, just triangles and lines pressed into clay, but in the right context, this dusty slab changed the course of empires. There's a quiet pride here, even under all the humor. These scribes and priests don't just record omens, they curate memory. They're the ones who link today's sky to yesterday's disasters, tomorrow's marriages, and next week's barley prices. They give meaning to randomness and structure to chaos. You begin to see how much of Babylon's power lies not in its walls, but in its stories. Suddenly, a gust of wind picks up. One of the looser scrolls flutters off the edge of the platform and glides across the rooftop like a paper moth. The priest doesn't move. "Let it go," he says. "If the wind wanted it, the wind can have it." You both chuckle. He offers you a stylus. "Want to try?" You hesitate, then kneel beside a small clay square. It's already been smoothed flat. You press the stylus in, slowly mimicking the careful wedge shapes. You write a short sentence, maybe your name, maybe a joke, maybe just a squiggle. Either way, it's now immortalized. The priest grins. "We'll file it under unclear but promising." As the final oil lamp flickers out, the scribe gathers the tablets into a woven basket, lifts it with both arms, and heads toward the temple's archives. You follow him, briefly peeking into the doorway. Inside, rows of clay shelves hold thousands of tablets, each one a whisper from a different night, each one a little piece of Babylon's cosmic diary. You're struck again by how old, how vast, and how personal this all feels. You're in a world where people talk to stars, argue with birds, and write jokes that last 3,000 years. You head back toward the others, your feet whispering across warm stone. The night isn't over yet, but it's getting sleepy. Mars has climbed higher now, burning bright against the soft indigo of the early morning sky. You watch as the red planet shifts slowly eastward, a stubborn spark that refuses to dim despite the creeping dawn. The priests are back in focus, eyes trained on its movement as if Mars were a wayward child about to break something valuable. You learn that in Babylonian astrology, Jupiter and Mars are like that volatile duo. Everyone knows from high school, Jupiter is the overachiever, always promising abundance and good harvests, while Mars is the wild one, prone to causing trouble. Floods, invasions, or the kind of scorpion infestation no one wants to explain at dinner. Tonight Mars is definitely in a mood. The eldest priest explains how the Babylonians believed Jupiter's position affected the city's fate. If Jupiter shone steady and bright, the barley harvest would be bountiful. If it flickered or shifted oddly, well, expect a lean season. It's not just guesswork, the priests had centuries of observations carved into tablets to back their claims. Still, historians debate whether these predictions were consistently accurate or if the scribes tended to retroactively match events to omens. Meanwhile, Mars's red glow throws a fiery hue over the rooftop, casting long shadows on the clay tablets. The priests murmur about its unwelcome speed, tonight worried that it might foreshadow something untoward. Maybe a flood, or a dispute in the market, or most worryingly, a sign that some visiting dignitary isn't as friendly as they appear. You glance at the city below. The Euphrates flows calmly, reflecting the faint light of dawn, but you can almost feel the tension in the air. The priests seem to sense it too. Their usual calm is tempered with a hint of alertness. One priest points to a tablet with a curious smirk and reads aloud, "When Mars moves erratically during barley planting, prepare for floods and angry spirits." The group nods gravely. You wonder if anyone's considered just building better dams. There's a subtle energy shift on the rooftop. The relaxed chatter becomes whispers. The steady scratching of stylus on clay slows to careful taps. It's as if Mars's presence is a caution sign telling everyone to pay attention. You lean back and notice a peculiar tradition to calm an angry Mars. Priests perform rituals involving drums, oil, and a decoy king. You raise an eyebrow, waiting for the catch. Apparently, when the moon turns red during an eclipse like the one predicted next week, The priests roll out a fake king statue, dress it in royal robes, and parade it through the city while banging drums and pouring oil on fires. This distraction ritual is meant to fool the gods into targeting the decoy instead of the real monarch. The idea is so bizarre you almost laugh, but you remember that keeping a king alive was a serious business. Historians still argue whether this decoy king ritual was common or just a rare spectacle. Some say it was only used during extreme celestial events, while others think it might have been a yearly tradition to keep the gods amused. Either way, it shows how the Babylonians combined practical politics with theatrical performances to navigate their fears. You watch the priests carefully preparing small drums for the ritual, their fingers tracing worn patterns, as if the rhythm could rewrite fate itself. One priest chuckles quietly. The gods might be deaf, but they appreciate a good beat. The sky begins to lighten further, and the stars fade one by one. Mars remains stubborn and bright until finally the horizon swallows it. The priests breathe a collective sigh, as if a storm has passed, though the sun is still hidden. You realize that Babylon's astrology nights are a delicate balance of hope, fear, and a whole lot of improvisation. And you're glad you're just here to watch. The night air, now tinged with the faintest hint of dawn, carries the sweet scent of honey and dates warming your senses after hours of cool, starlit watchfulness. A few priests have pulled out a small wooden tray, carefully arranging cubes of honeycomb and soft cakes made from barley flour and dates. You're invited to join, and the simple pleasure of the sweet food feels like a quiet reward after the long vigil. You bite into a piece of honey cake, sticky and surprisingly rich, and listen as the priests chat about the latest omen panic, because as it turns out, nothing says relaxing evening like a discussion of apocalyptic stargazing while snacking. One of them, an older priest with a laugh that sounds like gravel rolling down stone steps, recounts a recent incident. Apparently, a sudden shift in the position of Saturn had the whole temple in a mild uproar. Messages were sent to the city gates. Guards were doubled. Even the king's favorite goat was looked at suspiciously. The Saturn scare, they called it. You chuckle softly. It reminds you of how in any era, a sudden, unexpected change in routine can send people into a tailspin. You imagine Babylonian citizens nervously eyeing the sky while debating whether they should skip dinner or lock their doors. The priests debate whether the panic was justified. Historians still argue whether some of these omens were genuinely feared, or if the priests sometimes exaggerated their importance to maintain influence over the king and his court. You sense the playful skepticism under the surface of their stories. As you chew, the youngest priest leans in and whispers that these nights often spark wild rumors leading to surprisingly bureaucratic consequences, like ordering extra grain stores or rescheduling military drills. Apparently, astrology wasn't just mystical. It shaped practical decisions in the city's day-to-day life. You imagine a Babylonian merchant grumbling, "Great, now we have to delay the caravan because Mars is moody." The older priest nods, then adds that sometimes these omens even affected personal lives, deciding when to marry, when to plant crops, or when to avoid certain neighbors. The stars, he says, are like a cosmic scheduler, constantly updating the calendar based on mood swings millions of miles away. You laugh quietly, picturing an ancient dating app run by the gods. "Swipe left on retrograde Mercury," you mutter under your breath. The conversation drifts to the subtle rituals used to reset a bad omen. Honey and sweet cakes were often part of these ceremonies, symbolizing the hope for sweetness and calm after uncertainty. You realize that the act of sharing food up here isn't just about sustenance. It's a kind of comforting communion, a way to balance the tension of the unknown. You notice the priests' voices growing softer, the laughter quieter. The city below begins to stir, the distant calls of merchants, the clatter of carts, the occasional bark of a dog. The night's vigil is winding down. You swallow the last bite of honey cake and lean back against the cool stone. The stars above are fading fast now, but their messages linger in your mind like a gentle hum. You're not sure if the king's nightmares will come true, or if the chicken's dance was enough to keep disaster at bay. But for now, there's peace, and a sweet taste in your mouth. As the sky brightens with the first hints of dawn, a gentle breeze stirs the ziggurat's dust, carrying the distant sounds of the waking city merchants, calling out prices, children's laughter, and the clatter of wooden wheels on stone streets. You're still perched on the rooftop, eyes tracing the last twinkling stars fading into the morning light. The priests have gathered their tablets, their robes slightly rumpled from hours of vigil, but their expressions calm like sailors who have weathered a storm. You notice one of them quietly picking up a small harp resting against the temple wall. He strums a few soft notes, the melody weaving through the cool air as if the music itself were a benediction. Music and stargazing might seem worlds apart, but for the Babylonians both were forms of connection between earth and sky, between gods and people, between past and present. You realize that the rooftop tonight has been a stage not just for astrology but for ritual storytelling and shared humanity. One priest begins recounting an old tale about the goddess Ishtar, and how she once descended from the heavens to judge the stars themselves. The story is told in low melodic tones, rich with metaphor and mystery. You lean in, fascinated by the way myths and observations blend seamlessly here like ingredients in a sacred stew. The priest explains how Ishtar's judgment was believed to influence not just kings and battles, but the very rhythm of seasons and harvests. Historians still argue how much these myths shaped Babylonian astronomy, or vice versa, but it's clear the two were inseparable in people's minds. You're reminded that Babylonian astrology wasn't about cold, detached science. It was poetry, politics, and prayer all tangled together. Every star held a story, every planet a personality, and every movement a message. This wasn't just looking up, it was listening. The harpist shifts into a gentle lullaby, and you feel the weight of the long night beginning to settle like a soft blanket. The priests exchange quiet smiles, some stifling yawns, others stretching their stiff limbs. Outside the rooftop, the city is fully awake now. You hear the rhythmic pounding of a smith's hammer, the chatter of market stalls opening, and the distant bleating of sheep. Life goes on. You watch the sun peek over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The stars have vanished, but their presence lingers in the memory of the night, like the fading scent of incense. You stand and take a deep breath, savoring the cool morning air. The night's cosmic dance has come to an end, but the stories, the hopes, fears, and dreams written in clay and whispered under starlight will echo for centuries. You smile, feeling a surprising calm. The ancient world might seem distant and strange, but up here with the city waking beneath you, it feels quietly familiar. You step down from the ziggurat, the warm stones cool beneath your feet, and carry with you the night's secrets, ready to share them when the stars return again. The soft glow of early morning settles fully over Babylon, casting long shadows that stretch like sleepy cats across the bustling streets below. You find yourself wandering down from the ziggurat, your steps light on the worn stone as the city begins its daily rhythm. Merchants shout greetings, children chase each other in dusty alleys, and the scent of fresh bread drifts from open ovens. But even in this lively hum, the night stories cling to you like a dream just on the edge of waking. You think back to the astrologer's rooftop, to the dance of Venus and Mars, the solemn chanting, and Nugget the prophet's ceremonious egg. Babylon's astrology wasn't just about watching stars, it was about reading the city itself. You realize the priests saw the cosmos reflected in the streets, in the market stalls, and in every citizen's breath. Each star was a thread in the tapestry of daily life, linking the vast heavens to the tiniest human gesture. You pass a group of women weaving baskets near the river, their hands moving in practiced patterns as they hum an old tune. You wonder if they consult the stars before deciding when to harvest the reeds. Maybe the same omens whispered on the ziggurat's rooftop guide their work. At the edge of a courtyard, you spot a young boy staring up at the sky, clutching a clay tablet roughly shaped like a star. His eyes are wide with wonder. You smile and remember your own wide-eyed moments looking upward. Maybe he'll grow up to be an astrologer, scribbling secrets into tablets beneath the same constellations. Your path takes you to the marketplace, where the scent of spices mingles with freshly baked flatbreads. Vendors shout over each other, selling everything from goats to jewelry. The city feels alive, messy, vibrant, and endlessly fascinating. You overhear a conversation about the upcoming eclipse and how the priests have warned everyone to stay indoors during the dark moon's passage. People debate what it might mean: bad luck, a sign of change, or just a shadow. Historians still argue how seriously ordinary Babylonians took such warnings. Did the eclipse really cause widespread fear? Or was it just another part of life woven into daily stories like the patterns on woven cloth? As you stroll, you think about how Babylon's astrology was never just for kings and priests. It was for farmers, merchants, mothers, and children. It was the city's heartbeat, a shared language for uncertainty and hope. You pause by the Euphrates, watching the water shimmer under the growing sunlight. You realize that, like the river's flow, time moves onward, carrying old stories, ancient stars, and quiet dreams toward the future. And somehow that feels comforting. The sun has risen fully now, bathing Babylon in a warm golden light that makes the mud bricks glow like honey. The city is alive with motion and sound. but your mind drifts back to the quiet rooftop, where stars and omens shaped destinies. You think about the instruments the priests used, simple, yet ingenious. Long rods for measuring angles, polished obsidian mirrors reflecting the sky, and even water basins to capture star reflections. These tools might seem primitive now, but for their time, they were the cutting edge of celestial science. You imagine the painstaking work behind each observation. No telescopes, no computers, just sharp eyes, steady hands, and centuries of recorded knowledge carved into clay. Every tiny shift in the stars was noted with care because the fate of kings and cities depended on it. One priest you recall mentioned the Emuel Apin, a massive star catalog etched into tablets. It mapped constellations, star risings, and their seasonal significance. It was the Babylonian GPS of the night sky, guiding everything from crop planting to religious festivals. Historians debate how much Emuel Apin influenced later astronomy, but there's no doubt it was groundbreaking. The Babylonians invented much of the math that underpins modern astronomy, including the concept of dividing the sky into 360 degrees. It's humbling to think that the ancient astrologers' careful observations laid the groundwork for the science we take for granted today. As you wander through a quiet temple courtyard, you spot a group of young apprentices practicing their cuneiform. Their fingers press wedge-shaped marks into soft clay tablets, learning the script that records the universe's mysteries. You pause watching one boy trace the symbol for star. It's simple yet elegant, a reminder that every great journey begins with a single step, or in this case, a single wedge. You wonder what these apprentices will think of our modern world. Will they be amazed by satellites and space probes, or will they find our technology lacking the poetic rhythm of their ancestors' star charts? The priest beside you smiles knowingly and says, "The sky is always the same, but our ways of reading it change." You nod, feeling the truth of that. As the day unfolds, you realize Babylonian astrology was more than superstition. It was an art of listening to the stars, to dreams, and to the world around them. It was a way of making sense of uncertainty through ritual humor and shared stories. You take a deep breath of warm air, letting the ancient city's energy fill you. The stars may have faded with the dawn, but their stories remain etched forever in clay, whispered in myths, and alive in the quiet moments when we look up and wonder. The heat of midday settles over Babylon, turning the dusty streets into shimmering waves of light and shadow. You find yourself near the bustling temple market, where merchants trade incense, precious oils, and finely woven textiles dyed in colors as vibrant as the sky at sunset. The air buzzes with energy, but you're still caught in the echo of the night's cosmic tales. Nearby, a group of temple workers prepare offerings, bowls of fragrant spices, and carefully shaped loaves destined for the altars dedicated to the gods of the sky. You watch as they move with practiced grace, their actions steeped in tradition and reverence. One priest approaches and tells you about the significance of these offerings. In Babylonian belief, pleasing the gods wasn't just about grand rituals. It was about everyday gestures of respect, small acts that kept the divine forces benevolent. Offering sweet-smelling incense or a loaf of bread was like sending a thank-you note to the heavens. He explains how these rituals intertwined with astrology. For instance, during certain planetary alignments, offerings were made to specific deities to avert misfortune or encourage blessings. The temple calendar was a complex dance of stars and ceremonies, each feeding into the other. You smile at the thought of such an elaborate celestial schedule dictating the city's rhythm. It's like a cosmic orchestra where everyone plays their part, hoping the music keeps the world in harmony. The priest also shares a quirky tidbit. Some Babylonians believed that if a butterfly landed on your shoulder during a particular star's rising, it was a sign of good fortune. Unless it was a moth, then you might want to rethink your day. You chuckle and ask if butterflies really made it into official omens. He shrugs. Better safe than sorry. As you walk through the market, you overhear a heated debate among astrologers about the meaning of a rare comet sighting. Some say it heralds a great king's rise. Others warn of impending chaos. Historians still argue whether comets were genuinely feared or simply magnified through myth and political needs. You reflect on how much Babylonian astrology blended observation with interpretation, fact with folklore. It wasn't always about certainty, but about creating a shared language to navigate an unpredictable world. The day stretches on, and you feel a strange comfort in knowing that ancient Babylonians, despite their distance from us, grappled with similar questions: hope, fear, and the desire to understand the cosmos. You pause by a well, watching water ripple under the sun, and think the stars may guide us, but it's our stories that truly connect us across time. The sun dips low now, casting long golden shadows over Babylon's sprawling rooftops and winding streets. The city hums with the closing of markets, the soft chatter of families gathering for evening meals, and the distant melody of a flute drifting from a nearby courtyard. You find yourself back near the temple, the place where the night's mysteries were recorded, debated, and celebrated. The priests have gathered once more, preparing for a final ritual as the day fades. A low chant begins, rhythmic and soothing, weaving through the warm air like a comforting blanket. This ceremony isn't about omens or predictions. It's about gratitude, thanking the gods for guidance, protection, and the simple blessing of another day. You watch as small lamps are lit, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the ancient walls. The scent of frankincense rises, mingling with the earthiness of the temple stones. It's a sensory tapestry, rich and calming. One priest recites a prayer to the goddess Ishtar, invoking her grace and favor. His voice is steady, carrying a timeless cadence that seems to bridge centuries. The others join softly, creating a chorus that feels both intimate and vast. You feel a deep sense of peace settle over you. The night's celestial drama, the stars, the dreams, the chicken's dance has woven itself into the fabric of the city and your own experience. It's a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, people have always sought meaning and comfort in the cosmos. Historians still debate how much these rituals truly influenced Babylonian society versus how much they reflected it. But what's undeniable is the humanity at their core, the desire to connect, to understand, and to find beauty in the vast unknown. As the lamps burn low, you take a moment to breathe deeply, letting the calm wash over you. The day is ending, and soon the stars will return, ready to tell new stories. You feel a gentle pull toward sleep, the rhythm of the ancient city syncing with your own slowing heartbeat. The gods have whispered their secrets for now. It's time to rest. The night's journey through Babylonian astrology has been a slow, winding dance between stars and stories, science and superstition, the eternal and the everyday. You've glimpsed how a civilization long past made sense of the sky, using humor, ritual, and careful observation to navigate their world. Remember Nugget the prophet, the dream of the snake and the pomegranate, the sacred egg and the decoy king's drums? These are more than curiosities. They are threads in a tapestry that connects us across millennia. So when you next glance up at the night sky, consider the countless eyes that have looked before you, wondering, hoping, dreaming. Now as your own eyelids grow heavy, let the gentle hum of stars and stories lull you into rest. Sleep well, traveler. Sweet dreams.